Tonight I'll be reading some of the scariest stories people have shared on Reddit. So turn off the lights, get comfortable, and let's start with our first story. I was upstairs in my room one night playing video games with the volume really loud when I thought I heard noises coming from downstairs. I muted the TV and listened closer. Nothing. I resumed playing the game for another hour when I heard it again, only louder. I was sure I heard it this time and was a little freaked out. To assure myself, I went downstairs to the basement where I thought I heard the noise coming from. As soon as I opened the basement door, I was hit with a cold breeze. I went downstairs and saw the window wide open. I was 100% sure I had closed and locked all the windows in the house. I was ready to make a run for it when something stopped me. I turned around and for the first time noticed the closet door was slightly cracked open. I stood for what seemed like 30 minutes in front of that door, debating whether I should open it. I moved closer and put my hand on the doorknob. All of a sudden, I heard a creepy crackle coming from inside the closet. I have never run faster up a flight of stairs before. I locked the door and called the cops, who had an unusually fast response time. They came in and searched the house, and not even 5 minutes into their search, I heard a gunshot from downstairs. A few minutes later, they came out with a deranged-looking man, probably homeless. They put him in the back of the car and told me they had opened the door, and the man was holding a gunshot at them and missed. He luckily missed, and the cops disarmed him and arrested him. The scariest part was how close I was to opening that door and likely being murdered.
When I first took this job to be an over-the-road trucker, I thought it would be really exciting. I thought I'd get to travel the country and see the sights and come home with stories to tell my friends and family. I was right. This job is exciting, but I soon found that I'm better off not sharing these stories with anyone close to me. Not because I don't trust them, but because I'm worried they wouldn't believe me. Let me back up. My name is Brittany, I'm 22 years old, and I've been driving with a rather large company for a few months now, that I won't name, due to obvious reasons. Ever since my training ended and I got my own truck to start solo, I've seen some pretty weird shit. When you're driving the loneliest road in America, yes, that's its real name, in the middle of nowhere, Nevada, things can start to get to you. I suppose it was only a matter of time before I saw something, out in the desert at nearly midnight. I still had another hour to the nearest truck stop, and blasting the freezing cold air against my face was all I could do to keep myself from dozing off at the wheel. Irresponsible, I know, but until you work this job you don't understand how much lax comes with it. I was driving this highway, in the desert, in the pitch blackness of a cold summer night, when suddenly something runs out in the road in front of me. Before I can even react, it's gone across the other side into the bushes. I barely got a good look at it, but I could have sworn it looked like a large, white dog, faster than any dog I've ever seen. I tried to just ignore it and keep driving. I see animals crossing the road at night all the time, it didn't seem like anything to get worked up about. Not even a minute later I feel my truck lurch to the left and into the other lane. I quickly try to swerve and correct it, and easily step on the brake so I don't wreck. It can be easy to jackknife an 80,000-pound metal death machine. I slow it down and regain control. I look for the nearest pullover spot so I can see what the hell just hit my rig, and see if there's any damage. Once I find a spot and turn off, hit my brakes and hop out, I walk around to the other side and see a large dent in the side of my trailer. What the fuck? I say to myself, as I walk over to inspect the side of the trailer. It's a huge dent, at least 5 feet wide and tall. No real shape to it, just a general dent. I can't imagine what could have hit me. My first thought was maybe a boulder rolled down from the side of the hill and smashed into me, but I didn't think I was driving next to any hills or mountains. As far as I knew, it was flat desert. I hear the sound of dirt crunching under footfall behind me and I turn around. My breath catches in my throat and my stomach drops as I see something standing not 50 feet away from me. It's large, menacing, and white. I can't even find the words to describe what this thing looked like. It looked like a very large dog, and that's a stretch. It stood on two short, stout legs, with long forearms reaching down past its knees. Its shoulders were broad and heaving, as if it had just ran a marathon. Its head was mostly shaped like a wolf, with a large snout filled with razor-sharp teeth bared in a snarl, saliva dripping from its maw. Its jet-black eyes bore right through me, filled with hatred and hunger. I couldn't move, I was frozen in place. This creature stood between me and my only salvation, my truck. We stared at one another for a moment until I broke the silence. "You are one ugly motherfucker," I said. It snarled at me, then, very unexpectedly, it turned and walked away slowly using all four of its limbs, receding into the bushes and into the night. I stood there for what felt like several minutes, wondering if it would jump out and feed on my flesh at any moment. It never came back. I ran around the front of my truck and jumped inside, locking the door quickly and flooring it, as fast as you can floor an 18-wheeler, which is not at all. Soon I was back on the highway and barreling down it as if my life depended on it. For a while it felt like it did. Within a half hour I found myself at the truck stop and shut down for the night. Sleep was difficult that night. I was certain every noise I heard was that damn creature returning. Luckily, the night went on without another incident. I have more stories to tell, but this is getting long, so I think I'll stop here. Remember guys, be careful out there on the road, you never know what else is out there with you.
My Aunt Bonnie and cousin Jedediah lived far out in the country. The first time I'd ever stayed overnight was a long time coming. For some reason, despite Jed and my closeness, there was always a tug and pull between our families. For years I wanted to sleep over and they denied it. We were adolescents now, and after what happened I can see why they wanted us to mature a bit. It was early winter. We'd played baseball and shot BB guns in the yard all day, ate dinner, and asked to go outside just a little longer. Bonnie demanded we be in before dark. An understandable demand from a protective parent. But then Jed said something strange. "Stay with me. Don't go near the woods." "Why?" I asked. "Wolves," his dad interrupted. Good enough for me. Something about my uncle's voice, however, when he said wolves, sounded more like an excuse than a real reason. I'd never seen a wolf in Pennsylvania. We snuck to the tree line and just threw rocks as far as we could, listening for them to splash in the creek. If it did, that meant one of us had a hell of a throw. We both wanted to become MLB pitchers. We adhered to the rules, went inside at dusk, and slept through the night, though I did wake up at one point to hear what sounded like laughter outside. The noise went in and out, and I never gave it a second thought. Probably neighbors. I didn't think of it again until we left and drove down the road leading away from the house. I asked my grandma where the neighbor's house was. They own 200 acres on all sides. There aren't neighbors for at least a mile in every direction. I felt momentarily uneasy, but it passed. My Aunt Bonnie was much more lenient the next visit, which was the following weekend. "Just be in before dark. We know." "Without question," she emphatically stated. We had 2 hours until dark, when suddenly a warm front rolled in, and an ever-thickening fog came with it. "You boys stay in the yard," Uncle Rick shouted authoritatively. You don't question Uncle Rick, a man who regularly handled venomous rattlesnakes with his bare hands. We were playing baseball, and as the formless smog continued to drift across the state, the sound of blaring warning sirens wailed from afar, incrementally increasing in decibel, level up and back down in an eerie, howling sort of tone. "It's the no drive siren," Jed explained. "Our fogs can be dangerous out here." We still could see within reasonable distances around us. Aunt Bonnie called for us to come in when Jed asked for one last pitch. I threw the ball and he slugged it far over my head and into the woods. I hadn't thought about the no-woods rule since last time. I guess they assumed we'd comply. We intended to, but my uncalculated instinctual reaction was to follow the ball, and inadvertently I sprinted beyond the tree line and into the woods, probably 50 yards in retrospect. The last thing I heard Jed cry out was, "No!" Night was falling, and I'd run so far into the woods I couldn't see which direction was which, as the fog grew dense and uniform. My line of sight dwindled to 10 or 15 feet, on all sides. "Greg!" Jedediah shouted, but I was busy looking for my new ball, which I swore hit the dry, crunching leaves not too far from me. When I realized I'd never find it, a bothersome reality set in amidst the cacophonous siren and screams for my name. "Greg!" Jed shouted once again, clearly emanating from my 6 o'clock. But as I paced in his direction, once again, my name was shouted. From the opposite direction, deeper into the woods. The only thing which caused a chill to run through my blood was that the voice coming from the brush sounded like a little girl. Just as the trees began to crack and settle into the ever-shifting winds, I got a dreadful feeling. "Hello," I cried out, only the sound of cackling high up into the trees and far away. "Hello," I screamed, my tone infused with nervous distress. And then a rustling, like leaves dragged upon by something, coming at me from just ahead, getting closer and closer. And then, spoken delicately like a young child, I heard, "Greg." A gentle question, followed by a surreal and horrifying vision. 2 bare feet attached to bare legs, hovering just above the ground, toes dragging against the forest floor. Then, the sudden thumping of footsteps sprinting at me attached to a bright light. I was instantly pulled with inhuman strength by a tight grip. It was Uncle Rick. "Go back home!" he shouted angrily over my head. I was swept away, Uncle Rick urging me to run and not let go of his hand. We broke through the trees and barreled forward through the porch door and then into the house in a blur. He locked the door frantically. I didn't even know what I saw. "You don't know what's in those woods," he yelled as he shakily fastened the lock and hatch. "Turn off the lights." This was the reason, I assumed, for the no woods, no night rule. I wasn't even sure of what I really saw. Nobody got angry. I didn't even get yelled at, just told to go to our room and get to bed. Aunt Bonnie had an expression not of disappointment, but of concern. Jedediah looked frightened. We didn't say anything to each other. He went to bed, and I got in my sleeping bag on Jed's floor. I couldn't fall asleep, only ponder what it was I'd actually seen in those woods. It got quiet for a while, but then I heard it. The same thing from last time. Laughter, outside, only it sounded like it was closer, in the yard. It sounded like children were chasing each other in circles around the house. It got silent eventually. It would be a while before I got drowsy. Maybe an hour. And that's when I heard a sound at Jed's window. Delicate scratches, like fingernails. Jed spoke out quietly. "Don't pay attention to it. It will go away." I'm not sure what was more unsettling, the fact that Jed had been lying awake in scared silence for over an hour, or the fact that the tapping on the window sounded like a person trying to get our attention. Our room was on the 2nd floor. The next day, on the way home, I began to tell my grandma what had happened, until she stopped me. We drove on in uncomfortable silence as I felt scolded for several miles, and then I finally asked, "What was it, last night?" She took a puff of her cigarette and exhaled, blowing it out the cracked window. "There are things around those woods that we don't understand. The house belongs to your family, but the forest will always belong to them. If they call your name, never answer."
I was 10 to 11 years old when this started. My brother was 4 to 5. Like most kids, Kyle too had an imaginary friend. And like most kids with imaginary friends, Kyle had given his a name with distinctive physical features. If I remember correctly, the friend's name was Bosco. Bosco was short, pudgy, and had a gray beard. My parents thought it was a bit strange that Kyle's imaginary friend would be an adult man, but they didn't dwell on it too much. Bosco quickly became a part of our daily routine. While getting ready for school, Kyle would insist that I needed to stop hogging the mirror as Bosco had to fix his hair and beard. At breakfast, and lunch and dinner, the chair next to Kyle was to be left unoccupied because that's where Bosco would sit. My parents were just grateful that he didn't ask for an extra platter to be prepared, as Bosco did not eat. He just wanted to sit there to keep Kyle company. Bosco would make his presence felt at school too. Kyle's teacher once called my mom how impressed she was with Kyle's quickly expanding vocabulary. He was learning new words, and when asked, he would say his friend Bosco had said them to him. I remember this one instance when a new family moved into our neighborhood. Their kid was Kyle's age. Mom took us over to say hello to them. I remember Kyle shook the other kid's hand and said rather clearly, "I'm very pleased to make your acquaintance." The other kid just stared. My mom struggled not to look smug. My dad wasn't all that interested in Kyle's friend, or in anything else his kids did for that matter. So it was mostly my mom and I who got to hear about how nice and fantabulous Bosco was. Then came the incident that made us rethink just how imaginary Bosco really was. One day, Kyle and I were waiting at the bus stop just outside of school for Mom to pick us up. This place always had a lot of parents and kids around, so it was safe. Suddenly, Kyle began pulling on my arm, telling me he wanted to go to the store across the street and get a candy bar. I told him we could get one when Mom got there, but he just wouldn't listen. He pulled on my arm almost frantically and kept saying he needed a candy bar now. I gave in, and walked with him to the store, all the while telling him if Mom got mad at us, it would be his fault. The moment we had crossed the street, the driver of a bus lost control of the vehicle and mowed down a bunch of people at the bus stop. It was like a scene from a movie. I was in a state of shock while Kyle started crying. When my mom got there, she hugged us for what seemed like an eternity. She knew we could have been among the people who were crushed. Once we had gotten home and had calmed down, she asked me why we had crossed the street. I told her about Kyle wanting a candy bar. She questioned Kyle, who told her he didn't really want a candy bar. Bosco did. And he's the one who told Kyle to get me to go to the store with him. My mom turned pale. For some time after that, life went on as usual. Mom now asked Kyle about Bosco quite regularly. But he didn't say anything out of the ordinary, just regular kid stuff. But another surprise for us was right around the corner. My mom's sister, our Aunt Rita, had just moved to our town. She had landed a job at the same company where Dad worked. And I remember that she and my dad got along very well. One weekend, my mom took us to see our maternal grandparents. Dad said he couldn't come as he had work. Mom seemed disappointed but agreed to take us without him. Nana and Papa too were impressed at how articulate Kyle was becoming. And listened with great interest about his new friend Bosco. The next afternoon, we were all sitting in the living room. I was playing with my grandparents' dog. Mom and her parents were talking while Kyle was fiddling with the TV remote. He switched to a channel where the movie Ghost was playing. The famous pottery scene, you know which one, was on. Mom instantly grabbed the remote and changed the channel to Cartoon Network. Kyle was upset. He demanded to know why he couldn't watch the movie. Mom explained to him that he could watch it when he was older and that it wasn't appropriate for kids to watch grown-ups hug each other like that. Kyle argued some more and Mom again told him he wasn't old enough. He pouted and in sheer exasperation asked why it was okay for Dad and Aunt Rita to hug like that in his bed. Mom was taken aback and asked what he was talking about. Kyle told her that Dad and Aunt Rita would get naked and hug in his bed, just like in the movie, when we were at school and Mom was at work. Once or twice a week, Dad would come home for a while and he and Aunt Rita would hug in Kyle's bed. And then get dressed and leave. Mom was outraged and asked why he was making up such a disgusting story. Kyle insisted that he didn't make it up. Bosco had told him. Bosco also said that Aunt Rita was hugging Dad right then even as they spoke. Mom's gaze turned cold. She told our grandparents she was going home. She drove back to our house in a hurry. I deduced that Aunt Rita really was there because Mom came back later that night with more of our stuff and said that we'd be staying with Nana and Papa for a while. My parents were divorced by the end of that year.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what other types of scary stories you'd like to hear next.